I hope everybody is ready. Welcome in, welcome in, welcome in. And thank you for being with me tonight. My name is Paige. You are listening to Fabulous Nuts ASMR Soothing Bedtime Reading. We have two more of our stories from the book called The Red Fairy to go with. And tonight, both of them are about thieves. The first story of the night is called The Black Thief and the Knight of the Glen. In time of yore. Okay, let me start that over. That kind of blew that one, didn't it? All right, here we go, guys. I'm going to enlarge it just a tad. Oh, that went too high. We'll see if we can do it a little less. Okay, I'll just enlarge it over here. Okay, here we go. We're all back together and happy. Didn't want to do it. Well, we'll be all right. In times of yore, wait, let me start right here. The Black Thief and the Knight of the Glen. In times of yore, there was a king and a queen in the south of Ireland who had 3 sons, all beautiful children. But the queen, their mother, sickened unto death when they were yet very young, which caused great grief throughout the court, particularly to the king. Her husband, who could in no wise be comforted, seeing that death was drawn near her, she called the king to her and spoke as follows. I am going to leave you, and you are young in your prime. Of course, after my death, you will marry again. Now, all the request I ask of you is that you will build a tower in an island in the sea, wherein you will keep your 3 sons until they come of age and fit to do for themselves, so that they may not be under the power or jurisdiction of any other woman. Neglect not to give them education suitable to their birth, and let them be trained up to every exercise and pastime required for king's sons to learn. This is all I have to say. So, farewell. The king had scarce time, with tears in his eyes, to assure her he should obey everything when she turned herself in her bed and smiled and gave up the ghost. Never was greater mourning than was throughout the court and the whole kingdom, for a better woman than the queen to the rich and the poor has not to be found in the world. She was interred with the great pomp and magnificence, and the king, her husband, became in a manner inconsolable for the loss of her. However, he caused the tower to be built and his sons placed in it under the proper guardian, according to his promise. In process of time, the lords and knights of the kingdom counseled the king, as he was young, to live no longer as he had done, but to take a wife, which counsel prevailing, they chose him a rich and beautiful princess to be his consort, a neighboring king's daughter, of whom he was very fond. Not long after, the queen had a fine son, which caused great feasting and rejoicing at court, insomuch that the late queen, in a manner, was entirely forgotten, that fared well, And king and queen lived happily together for several years. At length, the queen, having some business with the hen wife, went herself to her, and after a long conference past, was taking leave of her, when the hen wife prayed that if it should ever come back to her again, that she might break her neck. The queen, greatly incensed at such a daring insult from one of her meanest subjects, demanded immediately the reason, or she would have her put to death. It was worth your it was worth your while, madam, says the henwife, to pay me so well for it, for the reason I pray so on you concerns you much. What must I pay you? Asked the queen. You must give me, she said, the full of a pack of wool, and I have an ancient crock which you must fill with butter, likewise a barrel which you must fill for me full of wheat. How much wool will it take to the pack? Says the queen. It will take 7 herds of sheep, she said, and their increase for 7 years. How much better will it be to take and fill your crock? 7 dairies, she said, and their increase for 7 years. And how much will it take to fill the barrel you have? Says the queen. It will take the increase of 7 barrels of wheat for 7 years. That is a great quantity, says the queen, but the reason must be extraordinary, and before I want it, I will give you all you demand. Well, says the henwife, it is because you're so stupid that you don't observe or find out these affairs that you are so dangerous and hurtful to yourself and your child. What is that? Says the queen. Why, she says, the king, your husband, has 3 fine sons. He had but the late queen, whom he keeps shut up in a tower until they come of age, intended to divide the kingdom between them. Let your son push his fortune. Now, if you don't find some means of destroying them, your child, and perhaps yourself, will be left desolate in the end. And what would you advise me to do? She said. I am wholly at a loss in the manner to act in this affair. You must make known to the king, says the henwife, that you heard of his son, and wonder greatly that he conceals them all this time for you. Tell him you wish to see them, and that in full time for them to be liberated, and that you would be desirous he would bring them to court. The king will then do so, and there will be a great feast prepared on the account, and also to diversions of every sort to amuse the people. And in these sports, she said, ask the king's son to play a game of cards with you, which they will not refuse. Now, says the henwife, you must make a bargain that if you win, they must do whatever you command them. And if they win, then you must do whatever they command you to do. This bargain must be made before the assembly. And here's the pack of card, she says, that I'm thinking you will not lose by. The queen immediately took the cards, and after returning, the henwife thanked her for her kind instruction, went back to the palace, where she was quite uneasy until she got to speaking to the king in regards of his children. At last she broke it off to him in a very polite and engaging manner, so that he could see no muster or design in it. He readily consented to her desire, and his sons were sent for from the tower, who gladly came to court, rejoiced that they were free from such confinement. They were all very handsome and very expert at all the arts and exercises, so they gained the love and esteem of all that had seen them. The queen, more jealous with them than ever, thought it an age until the feasting and rejoicing was over that she might get to make her proposal, depending greatly on the power of the henwife's card. At length, the royal assembly began to sport and play all kinds of diversions, and the queen very cunningly challenged the three princes to play cards with her, making bargains with them as she had been instructed. They accepted the challenge, and the eldest son and she played the first game, which she won. Then the second son played, and she won that game likewise. The third son, and then she played the last game, and he won it, which sorely grieved her that she had not him in her powers as well as the rest, being by far the handsomest and most beloved of the three. However, everyone was anxious to hear the queen's commands in regard to the two princes, not thinking that she had any ill designs in her head against them. Whether it was the henwife instructed her, or whether it was from her own knowledge, I cannot tell, but she gave out they must go and bring her the knight of the glens, wild steed of bells, or they should lose their heads. The young princes were not the least concerned, not knowing what they had to do, but the whole court was amazed at her demands, knowing very well that it was impossible for them ever to get the steed, as all that ever sought him perished in the attempt. However, they could not retreat the bargain, and the youngest prince was desired to tell what demand he had on the queen, as he had won his game. My brothers, he said, are now going to travel, and, as I understand, a perilous journey wherein they know not what road to take or what may happen to them. I am resolved, therefore, not to stay here, but to go with them and let what will betide. I request and command, according to my bargain, that the queen shall stand on the highest tower of the palace until we come back, or find out that we are certainly dead, with nothing but sheaf corn for her food and cold water for her drink, if it should be for 7 years and longer. All things being now fixed, the three princes departed the court in search of the king of the knight of the glens palace, and traveled along the road. They came upon with a man who was a little lame and seemed to be somewhat advanced in years. They soon fell into discourse, and the youngest of the prince asked the stranger his name, or what was the reason he wore so remarkable a black cape as he saw on him. I am called, he said, the thief of Saron, and sometimes the black thief from my cape. Is it a cap or a cape? Oh, it was a cap. For my cap. And so, telling the prince the most of his adventures, he asked him again where they were bound for, or what they were about. The prince, willing to gratify his request, told him of their affairs from the beginning to the end. And now, he says, we're traveling and do not know whether we are on the right road or not. Ah, my brave fellows, says the black thief, you little know the dangers you run. I am after that steed myself these 7 years, and I can never steal him on account of all the silk covering he covering he has on in the stable with 60 bells fixed to it, and whenever you approach the palace, he quickly observes it and shakes himself, which by the sound of the bells not only alarms the prince and his guards, but the whole country round. So it is impossible ever to get him, and those who are unfortunate as to be taken by the Knight of the Glen are boiled in red hot fiery furnace. Bless me, says the young prince, what shall we do? If we return without the steed, we'll lose our heads. So I see we are ill fixed on both sides. Well, says the thief of Sloane, if it were my case, I would rather die by the night than a wicked queen. Besides, I would go with you myself and show you the road, and whatever fortune you will have, I will take a chance of the same. They returned him sincere thanks for his kindness, and he, being well acquainted with the road, in short time brought them within view of the knight's castle. Now, he says, we must stay here till night comes, for I know all the ways of the palace, and if there be any chance for it, it's when they're all at rest, for the steed is all the watch the night keeps there. Accordingly, in the dead hour of the night, the king's 3 sons and the thief of Sloane attempted the steed of bells in order to carry him away, but before they could reach the stable, the steed neighed most terribly and shook himself so, and the bells rung with such noise that the knight and all his men were up in a moment. The black thief and the king's son thought to make their escape, but they were suddenly surrounded by the knight's guards and taken prisoner, where they were brought into the dismal part of the palace where the knight kept a furnace always boiling, in which he threw all offenders that ever came his way, which in a few moments would entirely consume them. Audacious villains, says the Knight of the Glen, how dare you attempt to be so bold in action as to steal my steed? See how the reward of your folly, for your greater punishment, I will not boil you altogether, but one after the other, so that he that survives may witness the dire affliction of his unfortunate companions. So saying, he ordered his servants to stir up the fire. We will boil the eldest looking of the young men first, he said, and so on to the last. Which will be this old chap with the black cap? He seems to be the captain, and look as if he'd come through many toils. I was as near death once as the prince is yet, says the black thief, and escaped, and so will he too. No, you never were, said the knight, for he is within 2 or 3 minutes of his latter end. But, says the black thief, I was within 1 moment of my death, and here I am. How is that possible? Says the knight. I would be glad to hear it, for it seems impossible. If you think, Sir Knight, says the black thief, that the danger I was in surpasses that of this young man, will you pardon his crime? I will, says the knight. So go on with your story. I was, sir, he says, a very wild boy in my youth, and came through many distresses. Once in particular, I was on my rambling. I was benighted and could find no lodging. At length I came to an old kiln and and being much fatigued, I went up and lay in the ribs. I had not been there long when I saw 3 witches coming in with 3 bags of gold, each putting their bags of gold the heads of under their heads as to sleep. I heard one of them say to the other that if the black thief come on them while they slept, he would not have them a penny. I found by their discourse that everybody had got my name in their mouth, though I kept silent as death during their discourse. At length they fell fast asleep, and the whole and then I stole my way down. I stole softly down, and seeing some turf convenient, I placed one under each of their heads, and off I went with their gold as fast as I could. I had not been gone far, continued the thief of Sloane, until I saw a greyhound, a hare, and a hawk in pursuit of me. I began to think it must be the witches that had taken these shapes in order that I might not escape them unseen, either by land or water, seeing they did not appear in any formidable shape. I was more than once resolved to attack them, thinking that with my broadsword I could easily destroy them. But considering again that it was perhaps still in their power to become alive again, I gave over the attempt, climbed with difficulty up a tree, bringing my sword in my hand and all the gold along with me. However, when they came to the tree, they found what I had done, and making further use of their hellish art, one of them changed into a smith's anvil, and another into a piece of iron, of which the third soon made a hatchet. Having the hatchet made, she fell to cutting down the tree, and in the course of an hour it began to shake with me. At length it began to bend, and I found that 1 or 2 blows at most would put it down. I then began to think that my death was inevitable, considering that those who were capable of doing so much would soon end my life. But just as she had the stroke drawn that would terminate my fate, the cock crew and the witches disappeared, having resumed their natural shapes for fear of being known, and on I got safely off with my bags of gold. Now, sir, he said to the knight of the glen, if that not be as great an adventure as you have ever heard, to be within 1 blow of a hatchet to end, and that blow being drawn, and after all to escape, I leave it to yourself. Well, I cannot say, but it is extraordinary, said the knight of the glen, and on that account pardon this young man of his crime. So stir up the fire till I boil this second one. Indeed, said the black thief, I would fain think he would not die this time either. How so? Says the knight. It is impossible for him to escape. I escaped death more wonderfully myself, says the thief of Sloane, than if you had him ready to throw into the furnace, and I hope it will be the case with him likewise. Why, have you been in another great danger? Says the knight. I would be glad to hear the story too, and if it is as wonderful as the last, I will pardon this young man as I did the other. My way of living, sir, says the black thief, was not good, as I told you before, and being a certain time barely ran out of cash, and meeting with no enterprise worthy of notice, I was reduced to great straits. At length a rich bishop died in the neighborhood, and I was then in, and I heard he was interred. I was then in, and I heard he was interred with a great deal of jewels and riches, robes and rich robes upon him, all which I intended in a short time to be the master of. Accordingly, that very night I set about, and coming to the place, I understood he was placed at the far end of a long, dark vault, which I slowly entered. I had not gone far until I heard a foot coming towards me with a quick pace, and although naturally bold and daring, yet thinking of the deceased bishop and the crime I was engaged in, I lost courage and ran towards the entrance of the vault. I had retreated but a few paces when I observed between me and the light the figure of a tall, dark man standing in the entrance. Being in great fear and not knowing how to pass, I fired a pistol at him, and he immediately fell across the entrance. Perceiving him still retained the figure of a mortal man, I began to imagine that it could not be the bishop's ghost. Recovering myself, therefore, from fear I was in, I ventured to the upper end of the vault, where I found a large bundle, and upon further examination, I found the corpse was already rifled, and that which I had taken to be a ghost was no more than one of his own clergy. I was very sorry that I had had the misfortune to kill him, but then not very sorry that I had the misfortune to kill him. I took the bundle that contained everything belonging to the corpse that was of value, intended to take my departure from the melancholy abode. But just as I came to the mouth of the entrance, I saw the guards of the palace coming towards me, and distinctly heard them saying that they would look in the vault for the black thief, would think little of robbing the corpse if he was anywhere in the palace. I did not know then what manner to act. I did not know in what manner to act, for if I was seen, I would surely lose my life, and everybody had to look out at one time, and because no one person bold enough to come in on me, I knew very well on the first sight of me that could be got, I would be shot like a dog. However, I had not time to lose. I took and raised up the man which I had killed as if he was standing on his feet, and I crouched behind him, bore him up. Oh, I know he did. Bore him up as well as I could, so that the guards readily saw him as they came up to the vault. Seeing the man in black, one of them cried that was the black thief, and presented his piece, fired at the man, at which I let fall, and crept into the little dark corner myself, and that was the entrance of the place. When they saw the man fall, they ran all into the vault, and never stopped until they were at the very end of it, for fear, as I thought there might have been some others along with him that would. But while they were busy inspecting the corpse in the vault to see what they could miss, I slipped out, and once away, and still away, but they never had the black thief in their power since. Well, my brave fellow, said the knight of the glen, I see you have come through many dangers. You have freed these two princes by your stories, but I am sorry myself that this young prince has to suffer for all. Now, if you could tell me something as wonderful as you have already told, I would pardon him likewise. I pity this youth and do not want to put him to death if I could help it. That happens well, said the thief of Sloan, for I like him best myself, and have reserved the most curious passage for last. On I have reserved the most curious passage for last on his account. Well, then, said the knight, let's hear it. I was one day on my travels, said the black thief, and I came into a large forest where I wandered a long time and could not get out of it. At length I came to a large castle, and fatigue obliged to call in the same, where I found a young woman and child sitting on her knee and crying. I asked her what made her cry and where the lord of the castle was, for I wondered greatly that I saw no stir of servants or any person about the place. It is well for you, said the young woman, that the lord of the castle is not home at present, for he is a monstrous giant with but one eye on his forehead, who lives on human flesh. He brought me this child, says she. I do not know where he got it, and ordered me to make it into a pie, and I cannot help crying at the command. I told her that if she knew of any place convenient that I could leave the child safely, I would rather do that. I would do it rather than it should be killed by such a monster. She told me of a house in a distance, off where I would get a woman who would take care of it. But what will I do in regard to the pie? Cut a finger off it, said I, and I will bring you a young wild pig from the forest, which you may dress as if the child, and put the finger in a certain place, that if the giant doubts anything about it, you may show where to turn it over the first, and when he sees, he'll be fully satisfied that the pie is made of the child. She agreed to the scheme I proposed, and cutting off the child's finger by her direction, I soon had it at the house she told me, and brought the little pig in the place of it. She then made ready the pie, and after eating and drinking heartily myself, I was taking my leave of the young woman when we observed the giant coming through the castle gates. Bless me, she said, what will I do now? Run away and lie down among the dead bodies that he has in the room, showing me the place, and strip off your clothes that he might not know you from the rest, if he has occasion to go that way. I took her advice, laid myself down amongst the rest, as if I had to see how he would behave. The first thing I heard was him calling for his pie, but when she set it down before him, he swore it smelt like swine. But knowing where to find the finger, she immediately turned it up, which fairly convinced him of the contrary. The pie only served to sharpen his appetite, and I heard him sharpening his knife and saying he must have a clop or two, for he was not near satisfied. But what was my terror when I heard the giant groping amongst the bodies, and fancying myself, cut half of my hip off and took it with him to be roasted. You may be certain I was in great pain, but the fear of being killed prevented me from making any complaint. However, when he had eaten all, he began to drink hot liquors in great abundance, so that in a short time he could not hold up his head, but threw himself on the large creel he had made for that purpose, and fell fast asleep. When I heard him snoring, I went up and caused the woman to bind my wound with a handkerchief, and take the giant spit, redden it in the fire, and run it through the eye, but was not able to kill him. However, I left that spit sticking in his head, took to my heels, but I soon found he was in pursuit of me, although blind, and having an enchanted ring, he threw it at me and fell on my big toe and remains fastened to it. The giant then called the ring where it was, and to my great surprise, it made him answer, Wow, that's hilarious. The giant then called to the ring where it was, and to my great surprise, it made him answer on my foot. And he, guided by the same, made a leap at me, which I had the good luck to observe, and fortunately escaped the danger. However, I found running was no use as saving me as long as I had the ring on my foot. So I took my sword and cut off the toe it was fastened on, and threw both into a large fish pond that was convenient. The giant called again to the ring, which, by the power of enchantment, always made him answer. But he, not knowing what I had done, imagined it was still on some part of me, and made a violent leap to seize me, when he went into the pond, over head and ears, and was drowned. Now, Sir Knight, said the thief of Ceylon, you see what dangers I've come through, and always escaped, but indeed I am lame for want of my toe ever since. My lord and master, says an old woman that was listening all the time, that story is but too true, as I know well, for I am the very woman that was in that giant's castle, and you, my lord, the child that I was to make into a pie, and this is the very man that saved your life, which you may know now by the want of your finger that was taken off, and you have heard to deceive the giant. The knight of the glen, greatly surprised at what he had heard, the old woman tell, and knowing he wanted his finger from childhood, began to understand that that true story was indeed true. And this is my deliverer, he says. Oh, brave fellow, I not only pardon you all, but will keep you with myself while you live, where you shall feast like princes, and have every attendance that I have myself. But they returned their thanks on their knees, and the black thief told him that the reason they attempted to steal the steed of the bells, and the necessity they were under in going home. Well, says the knight of the glen, if that is the case, I bestow you my steed rather than this brave fellow should die. So you may go when you please, only remember to call and see me betimes, that we may know each other well. They promised they would, and with great joy they set off for their king, their father's palace, and the black thief along with them. The wicked queen was standing all this time on the tower, and hearing the bells ring at the great distance off, knew very well it was the princess coming home, and the steed with them, and through spite and vexation preceded or precipitated, yeah, speed and vexation precipitated herself from the tower and was shattered to pieces. The three princes lived happily and well during their father's reign, and always kept the black thief along with them. But how they did after the old king's death is not known. I find some of these words, like that, precipitated, very interesting. It's not one we usually read. Let's take a minute and say, hey, Mickey's Happy Lifestyle. 3 days, baby. 3 days, baby. 3 days, baby. I can't wait to see you. Hey, Patrick, thank you for coming in. And thank you all. We have another story of thieves to read. And this one is called The Master Thief. You get a big drink of water for this. The Master Thief. There was once upon a time a husband. Wow. The Master Thief. There was once upon a time a husbandman who had 3 sons. He had no property to bequeath to them, and no means of putting them in the way of getting a living, and did not know what to do. So he said that they had to leave, to take anything they most fancied and go to any place they liked best. He would gladly accompany them for some part of their way. He said and that he did. He went with them till they came to a place where 3 roads met, and there each one of them took his own way. And the father bade them farewell and returned to his own home again. What became of the 2 elder, I have never been able to discover, but the youngest went both far and wide. It came to pass one night that he was going through the great woods that a terrible storm came. It blew so hard and rained so heavily that he could scarcely keep his eyes open, and before he was aware of it, he had not he had quite got out of the track and could neither find the road nor the path. But he went on, and at last he saw a light far away in the wood. Then he thought he must try and get to it, for after a long, long time he did reach it, and there was a large house, and a fire was burning so brightly inside that he could tell that the people were not in bed. So he went in, and inside there was an old woman who was busy about some work. Good evening, mother, said the youth. Good evening, said the old woman. Hoot a toot, it is terrible weather out tonight. Indeed it is, said the old woman. Can I sleep here and have shelter for the night? Asked the youth. It wouldn't be good for you to sleep here, said the old hag, for if the people of the house come home and find you, they will kill you, both you and me. What kind of people dwell here? Asked the youth. Oh, robbers and rabble and that sort, said the old woman. They stole me away when I was little, and I've had to keep house for them ever since. I still think I will go to bed all the same, said the youth. No matter what happens, I will not go out tonight in such weather as this. Well, then, it will be worse for you, said the old woman. The young man lay down in bed, which stood near, but he dared not go to sleep. It was better that he didn't, for the robbers came, and the old woman said that there was a young fellow who was a stranger had come there, and that she had not been able to get him to go away. Did you see if he had any money? Said the robbers. He had no money. He's a tramp. If he has a few clothes on his back, and that's all. Then the robbers began to mutter to each other, apart about what they should do with him, whether they should murder him, or what else they should do. In the meantime, the boy got up and began to talk to them, and asked them if they did not want a manservant, for he could find pleasure enough in serving them. Yes, they said, if you have the mind to take to the trade that we follow, you can have a place here. Is it all the same to me what trade I follow? For when I came away from my father, it's all the same to me what trade I follow, said the youth. For when I came away from my home, my father gave me leave to take any trade I fancy. You have a fancy for stealing, then, said the robbers. Yes, the boy thought, that was a trade which would not take long to learn. Not very far off, there dwelt a man who had 3 oxen, one of which he had taken to the town to sell. The robbers had heard of this, so they told the youth that if he were able to steal the ox from him on the way without his knowing and without doing him any harm, he should have leave to be their servant man. So the youth set off, taking with him a pretty shoe with a silver buckle. that was lying about in the house. He put this on the road by which the man must go with his ox, and then he went into the wood and hid himself under a bush. When the man came up, he at once saw the shoe. "That's a brave shoe," he said. "If I had but one but the fellow to it, I would carry it home with me, and then I should put my old woman into a good humor for once." For he had a wife. Thank you, Hub Interactive. Good to see you. For he had a wife who was so cross and ill tempered that the time between the beating she gave him was very short. But then he bethought himself that he could do nothing with one shoe if he had not the fellow to it. So he journeyed onward and let it lie where it was. The youth picked it up, the shoe, and hurried off away through the woods as fast as he was able to get in front of the man, and then put the shoe in the road before him again. When the man with the ox came and saw the shoe, he was quite vexed at having been so stupid as to leave the fellow to it lying where it was, instead of bringing it with him. "I'll just run back and fetch it now," he thought to himself, "and then I will take back a pair of good shoes to the old woman, and she may perhaps throw a kind word to me for once." So he went and he searched for the other shoe for a long, long time, but no shoe was to be found, and at last he was forced to go back with the one he had. In the meantime, the youth had taken the ox, gone off with it, and when the man got there and found that his ox was gone, he began to weep and wail, for he was afraid that when his old woman got to know, she would be the death to him. But all at once there came into his head to go home and to get the other ox, and to drive it to town, and take good care that his old wife knew nothing about it. So he did this. He went back home and took the ox without his wife knowing about it, and went on his way to town. But the robbers, they knew it well, because they got out their magic. So they told the youth that if he could take this ox also without the man knowing anything about it, and without doing him any hurt, he should then be equal to them. "Well, that's a very hard thing to do," thought the youth. This time he took with him a rope, and put it under his arm, and tied himself up in a tree which hung over the road that the man would have to take. So the man came with his ox. Then he saw the boy hanging there, and it felt a little weird. "What a hard lot yours must have been to make you hang yourself," he said. "Oh, well, you may hang there for me. I can't breathe life into you again." Soon he went with his ox. So on he went with his ox. Then the youth sprang down from the tree, ran by the short cut, and got before him once more, and hung himself up in the tree in the road before the man. "How, I should like to know, if you really were so sick at heart that you hung yourself there, or if it's only a hobgoblin that is before me," said the man. "Ah, well, you may hang there for me, whether you're a hobgoblin or not." And on he went with his ox. Once more the youth did just as he had done twice already, jumped down from the tree, ran by a short cut through the woods, and again hung himself in the middle of the road before him. But when the man once more saw him, he said to himself, "What a bad business is this! Can they all have been so heavy-hearted that they have all three hung themselves? No, I can't believe that is anything but witchcraft. But I will know the truth," he said. "If the two others are still hanging there, it is true. But if they are not, it is nothing else but witchcraft." So he tied up his ox and ran back to see if they really were hanging there. While he was gone, And looking at every tree as he went, the youth leapt down and took the ox and went off with it. And the one Anyone may easily imagine what a fury the man felt when he got back and saw his ox was gone. He wept and he raged, but at last he took comfort and told himself the best to do was to go home and take the third ox without letting his wife know anything about it, and then try to sell it so well that he got a good sum of money for it. So he went home and took the third ox and drove it off without his wife knowing anything about it. But the robbers knew about it, and they told the youth that if he could steal this, as he had stolen the other two, he should be master of the whole troop. So the youth set out and went into the woods. And when the man was coming along with the ox, he began to bellow loudly, just like a great ox somewhere inside the woods. And when the man heard that, he was like right glad, for he fancied he recognized the voice of his big bullock, and thought that now he should find both of them again. So he tied up the third and ran away off the road to look for them in the wood. In the meantime, the youth went away with the third ox. When the man returned and found he had lost that too, he fell into such a rage that there was no bounds to it. He wept, he lamented, and for many days he did not dare to go home again, for he was afraid the old woman would slay him outright. The robbers also were not very well pleased at this, for they were forced to own that the youth was the head of them all. So one day they made up their minds to set to work to do something which it was not in his power to accomplish, and they all took the road together and left him home alone. When they were well out of the house, the first thing they did was drive the oxen out on the road, wherein they all ran home again. They all ran home again to the man from whom they were stolen, and right glad was the husbandman to see them. Then he brought out his most valuable things which he could find, vessels of gold, of silver, and the cloth, and other magnificent things. And then he told the old woman to greet the robbers from him and thank them from him, and say that he had gone away, and that they would have a great difficulty in finding him again. And with that, he drove the horses out of the courtyard. After a long time, he came to the road on which he was traveling. And when he came to the robbers, and when he had gotten very near home, and with the sight of the house where his father lived, he put on a uniform which he had found among the things he had taken from the robbers, and which was made just like a general's, and drove into the yard as if he were a great man. Then he entered the house and asked if he could find a lodging there. No, indeed you can't, said the father. How could I possibly be able to lodge such a great gentleman as you? It is all I can do to find clothes and bedding for myself, the wretch they are. You are always a hard man, said the youth, and hard you still are if you refuse to let your own son come into your house. You are my son, said the man. Do you not know me then again then? Said the youth. Then he recognized him and said, well, what trade have you taken that has made you such a great man in so short of a time? Oh, that I will tell you, answered the youth. You said that I might take to anything I like. So I apprenticed myself to some thieves and robbers, and now I have served my time and have become master thief. Now, the governor of the province lived by the father's cottage, and this governor had such a large house and so much money that he did not even know how much it was. And he had a daughter too, who was both pretty and dainty and good and wise. So the master thief was determined to have her to wife, and told his father that he was going to the governor and ask for his daughter if he wants. Ask what trade I follow. You may say that I'm a master thief, he said. I think you must be crazy, said the man, for you can't be in your senses if you think of anything so foolish. You must go to the governor and beg for his daughter. There is no help, said the youth. But I dare not go to the governor and say this. He is so rich and has so much wealth of all kinds. There is no help for it, said the master thief. You must go whether you like it or not. If I cannot get you to go by using good words, I will soon make you go with bad ones. But the man was still unwilling, so the master thief followed him, threatening him with great birch stick, threatening him with a great birch stick until he went weeping and wailing through the doors of the governor of the province. Now, my man, what is amiss with you? Said the governor. So he told him that he had 3 sons who had gone away uh, one day, and he had given them permission to go where they choose and take whatever work they fancied. Now, he said, the youngest of them had come home and has threatened me till I have come to ask you for your daughter for him, and I am to say that he is a master thief. And again the man fell weeping and lamenting. Console yourself, my man, said the governor, laughing. You may tell him that he must first give me some proof of this. If he can steal the joint off the spit in the kitchen on Sunday, then every one of us watching, he shall have my daughter. Will you tell him that? The old man did tell him, and the youth thought it would be easy enough to do, so he set himself to work to catch 3 hares alive, put them in a bag, clad himself in some old rags, so he looked so poor and wretched that it was quite pitiable to see him in this guise. On Sunday afternoon he sneaked into the passageway with his bag, like any beggar boy. The governor himself and everyone in the house was in the kitchen, keeping a watch over the joint. While they were doing this, the youth let one of his hares slip out of the bag, and off it set and began to run around the yard. Just look at that hare, said the people in the kitchen, and wanted to go out and catch it. The governor saw it too, but said, Oh, let it go. It's no use to think of catching a hare when it's running away. It was not long before the youth let out another hare out of the bag, and the people in the kitchen saw that too, and thought it was the same. So again they wanted to go out and catch it, but the governor again told them that it was no use in trying. Very soon afterwards, however, the youth let slip his 3rd hare, and it was set off running around and around the courtyard. The people in the kitchen saw this too, and believed that it was still the same hare that was running about, so they wanted to go and catch it. It is such a remarkably fine hare, said the governor. Come and let us see if we can get hold of it. So he went out, and the others with him, and they went away after the hare. In the meantime, however, the master thief took the joint and ran off with it, and whether the governor got any roast meat for his dinner that day, I do not know, but I know that he had no roast hare, though he chased it till he was both hot and tired. At noon came the priest, and when the governor had told him of the trick played by the master thief, there was no end to the ridicule he cast on the governor. For my part, said the priest, I can't imagine myself being made a fool of by such a fellow as that. Well, I advise you to be careful, said the governor, for he may be with you before you are aware. But the priest repeated what he had said and mocked the governor for having allowed himself to be made such a fool of. Later in the afternoon, the master thief came and wanted to have the governor's daughter as he was promised. You must first give me some more sample of your skill, said the governor, trying to speak him fair, for what you did today was no very great thing after all. Couldn't you play off a really good trick on the priest? For he is sitting inside there, calling me a fool for having let myself be taken in by such a fellow as you. Well, it won't be very hard to do that, said the master thief. So he dressed himself up like a bird and threw a great white sheet over himself, broke off a goose's wing, and set them on his back, and in this attire climbed to a great maple tree which stood in the priest's garden. So when the priest returned home that evening, the youth began to cry, Father Lawrence, Father Lawrence. For the priest was called Father Lawrence. Who is calling me? Said the priest. I am an angel sent to announce to thee that because of thy piety thou shalt be taken away alive to heaven, said the master thief. Wilt thou hold thyself in readiness to travel away next Monday night? For then I will come and fetch thee and bear thee away with me in a sack, and thou must lay all the gold and silver and whatever thou must possess in the world's wealth in a heap in thy best parlor. So Father Lawrence fell down on his knees before the angel and thanked him, and the following Sunday he preached a farewell sermon, gave out that an angel had come down from the large maple tree in his garden and announced to him because of his righteousness he should be taken up alive into heaven. And as thus he preached, he told them this everyone in the church, old or young, wept. On Monday night, the master thief once more came as an angel, and before the priest was put into the sack, he fell on his knees and thanked him. But no sooner was the priest safely inside it than the master thief began to draw him away over stocks and stones. Oh, oh, cried the priest in the sack, where are you taking me? This is the way to heaven. The way to heaven is not an easy one, said the master thief, and dragged him along, all but killed him. At last he flung him into the governor's goose house, and the geese began to hiss and peck him till he felt more dead than alive. Oh, 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 where am I now? Asked the priest. Now you're in purgatory, said the master thief, and off he went and took the gold and silver and all the precious things which the priest had laid together in his best parlor. The next morning, when the goose girl came to let the geese out, she heard the priest bemoaning himself as he lay in the sack in the goose house. Oh, heavens, who is that and what ails you? She said. Oh, if you're an angel from heaven, do let me out and let me go back to earth again, for no place was ever so bad as this. The little fiends nipped at me with their tongues. I am no angel, said the girl, and helped the priest out of the sack. I am only I only look after the governor's geese. That's what I do. And there are the little fiends which have pinched your reverence. This is the master thief's doing. Oh, my gold and silver and my best cloth, shrieked the priest, and wild with rage he ran home so fast that the goose girl thought he had suddenly gone mad. Excuse me, guys. When the governor learned what had happened to the priest, he laughed till it nearly killed him. But when the master thief came and wanted to have his daughter according to the promise, he once more gave him nothing but fine words and said, You must give me one more proof of your skill so that I can really judge your worth. I have 12 horses in my stable, and I will put 12 stable boys in it. one on each horse. If you're clever enough to steal horses from under them, I will see what I can do for you. What you set me to do can easily be done, said the master thief. But I am certain to get your daughter when it is. Yes, if you can do that, I will do my best for you, said the governor. So the master thief went to a shop, and he bought enough brandy to fill two pocket flasks, and he put a sleeping drink into one of these, but in the other he poured only brandy. Then he engaged 11 men to lie that night in hiding behind the governor's stable. After this, by fair words and good payment, he borrowed a ragged gown and jerkin from an aged woman, and then, with a staff in his hand and a poke in his back, he hobbled off as if coming towards the governor's stable. The stable boys were just watering the horses for the night, and it was quite as much as they could do to attend that. What on earth do you want here? Said one of them to the old woman. Oh dear, how cold it is, she said, sobbing and shivering with cold. Oh dear, it's cold enough to freeze a poor old lady to death. And she shivered and shook again. Oh, for heaven's sakes, give me to stay here, just inside the stable. You will get nothing of the kind. Be off this moment. If the governor were to catch sight of you here, he would lead us a pretty dance, said one. Oh, what a poor helpless old creature. And another, who felt sorry for her, that poor old woman can do no harm to anyone. She may sit there and welcome. The rest of them thought that she ought to stay, not to stay. But while they were disputing about this and looking after the horses, she crept further in to the stables, and at last sat down behind the door. And when once she was inside, no one took any more notice of her. As the night wore on, the stable boys found it was rather cold work to sit still on horseback. Hoo-te-too, but it's fearfully cold, said one, and began to beat his arms backwards and forwards across his breast. Yes, I am so cold that my teeth are chattering, said another. If one of you but a little tobacco, said the third. Well, one of them had a little, so they shared it amongst, though there was very little for each man, but they chewed it. This was some help to them, but very soon they were just as cold as before. Hoo-te-too, said one of them, shivering. Hoo-te-too, said the old woman, gnashing her teeth together still. They chattered inside her mouth, and then she got out the flask, which contained nothing but brandy, and her hands trembling, so she shook the bottle about, and when she drank it made great gulps with her throat. What have you got in that flask, old woman? Asked one of the stable boys. Only it's only a drop of brandy, your honor, she said. Brandy, what? Let me have a drop. Let me have a drop, screamed all 12 boys. Oh, but what I have is so little, whispered the old woman. It will not even wet your mouths. But they were determined to have it, and there was nothing to be done but to give it to them. So she took out the flask with the sleeping drink in it, put it to the lips of the first of them, and now she took no more, but guided the flask so that each of them got just as much as he ought, and the 12th had not done drinking before the first was already sitting snoring. Then the master's thief flung off his beggar rags, took one stable boy after another, and gently set him astride a partition which divided the stalls, and then he called his 11 men who were waiting outside, and they rode off with the governor's horses. In the morning, when the governor came to look after his stable boys, they were just beginning to come to again. They were driving their spurs into the partitions till the splinters flew about them. Some of the boys fell off, and still some hung on and sat looking like fools. "Ah, well," said the governor, "it is easy to see who has been here, but that worthless set of fellows you must be to sit here and let a master thief steal horses from under you." And they all got a beating for not having kept a better watch. Later in the day, the master thief came and related what he had done, and wanted to have the governor's daughter as he had promised. But the governor had gave him $100 and said that he must do something that was still better still. "Do you think you can steal my horse from under me when I'm out riding on it?" "Well, it might be done," said the master thief, "if I was absolutely certain that I would get your daughter." So the governor said that he would see what he could do, and then he said on a certain day he would ride out in a great common area where they drilled the soldiers. So the master thief immediately got hold of an old worn out mare and set him to work to make a collar for it of green willies and branches of broom, brought by a shabby old coat and a great cask. And then he told the poor old beggar woman that he would give her $10 if she would get in the cask and keep her mouth wide open, breathing the tap hole in which he was going to stick his finger. No harm should happen to her, he said. She should only be driven about a little, and if he took his finger out more than once, she should. Oh, I don't understand that. Have $10 more. Then he dressed himself in rags, dyeing himself with soot, put on a wig and a great beard of goat's hair, so that it was impossible to recognize him, and went to the parade ground, where the governor had already been riding about a long time. When the master thief got there, he went along so slowly and quietly that the cart hardly seemed to move from the spot. The mare pulled it a little forward, then a little back, and it stood quite short. Then the mare pulled a little forward again, and moved it with such difficulties that the governor had not the least idea that this was the master thief. He rode straight up to him and asked if he had been seen anyone hiding anywhere in the woods that was close by. "No, I have not." "Hark you," said the governor, "if you will ride into the woods and search it carefully to see if you could light upon a fellow who is hiding there, you shall have the loan of my horse and a good present of money for your trouble." "I am not sure that I can do it," said the man, "for I have to go to a wedding with this cask of mead, which I have been to fetch, and the tap has fallen out of. So how so now I have to keep my finger in the tap hole as I drive." "Oh, just ride off," said the governor. "I will look after the cask and the horse too." So the man said that if he would do that, he would go, but he begged the governor to very carefully to put his finger into the tap hole the moment he took it out. So the governor said he would do his best, and the master thief got on the governor's horse. So, but time passed, and it grew later and later, and still the man did not come back. At last the governor grew so weary of keeping his finger in the tap hole that he took it out. "Now I shall have $10 more," cried the old woman inside the cask. He was soon saw what kind of mead it was, and set homeward. When he had gone a very little way, he met his servant bringing him the horse, and the master thief had already taken it home. The following day he went to the governor and wanted to have his daughter according to what was promised. But the governor again put him off with fine words, and only gave him $300, saying that he must do one more masterpiece of skill. If he were able to do that, then he should have her. Well, the master thief thought, if he could hear what it was, "Do you think you could steal the sheet off our bed and my wife's nightgown?" said the governor. That is by no means impossible, said the thief. I only wish I could get you to your daughter as easily. So late that night, the master thief went and cut down a thief who was hanging on the gallows, laid him on his own shoulders, and took him away with him. When he got hold of a long ladder, set it up against the governor's bedroom window, and climbed up, moved the dead man's head up and down, just as if he were some one who was standing outside and peeping in. There's the master thief, mother, said the governor, nudging his wife. Now I shall shoot him, that I will. So he took up a rifle which he had laid at the bedside. Oh, no, you must not do that, said the wife. You yourself arranged that he was to come here. Yes, mother, I will shoot him, she said, lay, laying there and aimed again. For no sooner was the head up than he caught sight of it again, and at last he got a chance and fired, and the body fell with a loud thud to the ground and went down, and down went the master thief too, as fast as he could. Well, said the governor, I certainly am the chief man about here, but people soon began to talk, and it would be very unpleasant if they were to see this body. The best thing I can do is to go out and bury him. Just do what you think best, father, said his wife. So the governor got up and went downstairs, and soon as he was gone through the door, the master's thief stole in and went straight upstairs to the woman. Well, dear father, she said. She thought it was her husband. Have you done already? Yes, I only put him in a hole, he said, and raked a little earth over him. That is all I've been able to do tonight, for it is fearful weather outside. I will bury him better afterwards, but just let me have the sheet to wipe myself with, for he was bleeding, and I got covered with blood with carrying him. So she gave him the sheet. Will you have to let me have your nightgown too? For I began to see that the sheet won't be enough. Then she gave him her nightgown, but just then it came to his head that he had forgotten to lock the door, and he was forced to go downstairs and do it before he could lie in bed again. So off he went with the sheet and the nightgown too. An hour later, when the real governor returned, well, what a time it has taken you to lock the house door, father, said his wife. And what have you done with the sheet and the nightgown? What do you mean? Asked the governor. Oh, I'm asking you what you have done with the nightgown and the sheet that I gave you to wipe the blood off yourself. Good heaven, he actually got the better of me again. When the day came, the master thief came to and wanted the governor's daughter as he had been promised. And the governor dared no dared do no otherwise than give her to him, and much money besides, for he feared if he did not, the master thief might steal the very eyes out of his head, and that he himself would be ill spoken of by all men. The master thief lived well and happy from that time forth, and whether he ever stole any more, I cannot tell you, but if he did, it was for a pastime. Thank you all for spending your night listening to some soothing bedtime stories. I sure do appreciate it. Hub Interactive, Nikki's Happy Lifestyle, and Patrick for jumping in the chat and leaving such wonderful messages. I do want to point out that I have changed my day from Thursday morning to Wednesday to drop my videos, and I'm still kind of refining the channel a little bit. So Sunday, Monday, Sunday, Tuesday, Thursday for the bedtime readings, just because I love to do them. Also, if you want to listen to the bedtime stories without a lot of the interruptions, my pauses, my mess ups, I am putting them into a podcast, and each of the books, as I complete a book, I'll upload a little while later the complete story. So you can download it and listen to the big long story. So far, I know I've published Grimm's, and other stories will be coming out next week when I'm out of town because I'm going to be with Nikki. I have the days I'm reading stories coming out that we've already read, but they'll be published then. And we are changing our video days, like I said, until to Wednesdays. And of course, in the membership, we have the 99-cent level and the other level. We have different things that happen over there. Feel free to go on and check it out and pick yourself up some happy nutty March. Yeah, with that being said, I think that's it. I'm about read out. How about you? Oh, oh. So one more thing. As I am revamping the channel, I am also revamping. I did for, I guess, a month or two, my midday meditations. I did it for two months, every Monday through Friday, for an hour or 2 to 3 hours. I did a midday meditation, just a time to publish something that was kind of soothing, relaxing, and I ran it as a live. That I am changing. Yes, I'm going to change that to only coming out on Monday and Fridays. It'll come out at a little bit earlier than midday, about 8-ish, 9-ish. I'll post on different times each day, but early morning for me. So I want Eastern Standard Time, whatever time that is. But those meditation moments where it's definitely the music or just a sound that's a little bit longer, I am going to continue with that, but cut it back some. And just kind of trying that. We're just trying out different things and seeing how it all kind of comes together. With that being said, have a wonderful night, guys. I can't believe it's already Thursday. Tomorrow is Friday. Yes, I am still painting. I started a bedroom this week. So anyway, thank you for all your continued support. Thank you for always being here. I hope you enjoy these stories. Some of them I read before and some I haven't. So I really am enjoying this book from around the world. We were in Ireland tonight. Good night, Nikki. I'll see you soon, sis. All right, guys. Night. Talk to you later. Yeah. Yes. Okay.